Most people know about Apple, they know about Microsoft, they know about Amazon, but there's a company more valuable than all of them. A company that produces 10% of the world's oil every single day. It's not American, it's not publicly traded, and it's controlled by a royal family that runs an entire country. This is Saudi Aramco, the oil empire worth $2 trillion that still controls the world, and the incredible story of how it went from American hands to Saudi power. The discovery that changed everything. The story of Saudi Aramco begins in the desert in 1933, when Saudi Arabia was one of the poorest countries on earth. King Abdulaziz ibn Saud had just unified the Arabian Peninsula and founded Saudi Arabia. But his new kingdom had almost nothing. No infrastructure, no industry, no money. The king needed revenue desperately. He'd heard rumors that oil might exist beneath the desert sands. In 1933, King Abdulaziz made a deal with Standard Oil of California, Sokol. He granted them exclusive rights to explore for oil in exchange for money and gold. The Americans were skeptical. Most geologists thought the Arabian desert was dry, no oil, just sand. But Sokol took the gamble. For 5 years, American engineers drilled in the brutal desert heat. They found nothing, dry hole after dry hole. They were about to give up. Then, on March 4, 1938, everything changed. Well, number 7, called Damam number 7, struck oil. Not just a little oil, massive quantities. An engineer who was there recalled, "When that well came in, we knew we'd found something extraordinary." This wasn't just oil. This was an ocean of oil. Saudi Arabia had the largest oil reserves on earth. The company that would become Saudi Aramco was born. At first, it was called the California Arabian Standard Oil Company, CASIC. In 1944, it was renamed the Arabian American Oil Company, Aramco. The Americans who built the kingdom for decades, Aramco was American-owned and American-run. Texaco, Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron, the biggest American oil companies, owned Aramco and controlled Saudi Arabia's oil. American engineers built entire cities in the desert. They constructed pipelines, refineries, ports, roads, and housing compounds. They brought American culture to Saudi Arabia baseball fields, movie theaters, swimming pools. The Aramco compounds looked like suburbs transplanted from California. Aramco employed tens of thousands of Saudis, but Americans held all the top positions. The Saudis did manual labor, while Americans made decisions. This created tension. Saudi workers began demanding better treatment, higher pay, and respect. Strikes broke out in the 1950s and 1960s. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia's government watched billions of dollars in oil revenue flow to American companies. The Saudi government got royalties, but the oil companies kept the majority of profits. King Faisal, who ruled in the 1960s, once said, "This is our oil. It comes from our land." Why do foreigners control it? The Saudis wanted control, and slowly, they started taking it. The nationalization that shocked the world. In the 1970s, Saudi Arabia began buying shares of Aramco from the American oil companies. By 1980, Saudi Arabia owned 100% of Aramco. The Americans were out. It was one of the largest nationalizations in history. A poor desert kingdom taking control of the world's most valuable oil company from the most powerful corporations on earth. The Saudis renamed the company Saudi Aramco and kept many American engineers and managers as consultants. But now Saudi Arabia controlled its own destiny, and the oil kept flowing. Billions of barrels, trillions of dollars. Saudi Aramco became the most profitable company on earth, the company that funds a kingdom. Saudi Aramco isn't just an oil company, it's the Saudi economy. Aramco provides about 90% of Saudi Arabia's government revenue. The entire country runs on Aramco's profits. Every hospital, every school, every road, every palace funded by Aramco. The Saudi royal family's wealth, estimated at over 1.4 trillion, comes largely from Aramco. An economist who studied Saudi Arabia explained, "Aramco is the kingdom. Without Aramco, Saudi Arabia would be poor. With it, Saudi Arabia is one of the richest countries per capita. Saudi Aramco produces about 10 million barrels of oil per day, roughly 10% of the world's total oil supply. The company controls the largest proven oil reserves on earth, an estimated 260 billion barrels. Aramco also owns the world's largest oil refinery, the largest offshore oil field, and some of the most advanced energy infrastructure on the planet. And Aramco's costs are insanely low. It costs Saudi Aramco only about 2 to 3 to produce a barrel of oil. Compare that to US shale oil, which costs 40 to 50 per barrel, or deepwater drilling, which costs even more. An energy analyst explained Aramco has the best oil in the world. It's shallow, easy to extract, high quality, and cheap. That's why they're so profitable. In 2019, Saudi Aramco reported $111 billion in net profit, the most profitable company in the world. Apple's profit that year, about $55 billion. Aramco made twice as much, the IPO that revealed the empire. For decades, Saudi Aramco was completely private. No outsiders knew its finances. No one knew its true value. Then, in 2019, Saudi Arabia decided to sell a small piece of Aramco to the public. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, wanted to raise money for his Vision 2030 plan to diversify Saudi Arabia's economy away from oil. On December 11, 2019, Saudi Aramco went public on the Saudi Stock Exchange, selling 1.5% of the company. The IPO valued Aramco at $2 trillion, the most valuable company on earth. It raised $25.6 billion, making it the largest IPO in history. For the first time, the world saw Aramco's financials. The numbers were staggering. In 2018, Aramco generated $356 billion in revenue and $111 billion in profit. Aramco is completely dependent on oil prices. When oil is expensive, Aramco makes massive profits. When oil crashes, profits collapse. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, oil prices briefly went negative. Aramco's profits dropped by nearly 50%. The prince, who controls it. All while Aramco is technically a company with a board of management, everyone knows who really controls it: Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. MBS, as he's called, is the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia and the chairman of Aramco's board. MBS has used Aramco as his personal tool to reshape Saudi Arabia and Project Power globally. He's used Aramco's profits to fund massive projects: Neom, a $500 billion futuristic city in the desert; The Line, a 170-kilometer linear city with no cars; sports investments, buying golf tours, soccer teams, and hosting major events. MBS also used Aramco to punish enemies. In 2019, Aramco's oil facilities were attacked by drones, allegedly by Iran-backed forces. Production temporarily dropped by half. MBS responded by tightening security and threatening retaliation. But MBS's control is controversial. Critics accuse him of authoritarianism, human rights abuses, and the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Investors worry that MBS's unpredictability makes Aramco risky. An international investor said Aramco is incredibly profitable, but is controlled by one man in an unstable region. That's a huge risk. The future in a carbon-conscious world. Saudi Aramco faces an existential threat. The world is moving away from oil. Renewable energy is expanding. Countries are pledging to reduce carbon emissions. If the world stops using oil, Aramco's $2 trillion value could collapse. MBS knows this. That's why he's pushing Vision 2030 to prepare Saudi Arabia for a post-oil future. But critics say Saudi Arabia is moving too slowly. A climate analyst said, Saudi Arabia talks about diversification, but 90% of government revenue still comes from oil. They're not ready for a world without oil. Aramco itself is investing in cleaner technologies, carbon capture, hydrogen fuel, renewable energy. But skeptics say it's not enough. An energy transition expert said Aramco is trying to adapt, but their entire business model depends on selling oil. That's a problem in a carbon-conscious world. Still, Aramco has one major advantage: time. Even in the most aggressive climate scenarios, the world will need oil for decades. Planes, ships, plastics, chemicals all require oil, and Aramco has the cheapest, most abundant oil on earth. The empire that runs on black gold, Saudi Aramco, proves that natural resources can create empires. That geography is destiny. That control and supply gives you control over the world. From an American gamble in the desert to a $2 trillion Saudi empire. From foreign control to national power. From oil wells to global influence. That's the story of Saudi Aramco, the company that still controls the world, one barrel at a time. If you enjoyed uncovering the 2 trillion oil empire that powers an entire kingdom and influences the global economy, let us know who we should investigate next. The most powerful companies often operate far from Silicon Valley, and we're revealing their stories.